the big venues have already been cherry-picked. They've already had third parties go in and install systems, and they built it based on a model that I think worked at the time, based on the technology and the equipment that was available. As we start moving down into these other smaller venues and opportunities, from our perspective, we really need to see a shift in the philosophy of the owners of these facilities. In that, as mentioned, my need in a facility may be completely different than Verizon's or AT&T's because of the many different factors that go into it. What spectrum position I have in that area. Do I have 700 megahertz or low band that's already penetrating the facility? Do I have capacity needs or not? And so for venues, as they start, we're talking even college campuses and hospitals, for them to think, oh, I've got to put a multi-million-dollar gas system in the hopes that everybody's going to show up, is just not economical and viable. And what we see is, a perfect example is I could have great coverage on one half of a hospital because I've got a macro site out there and I've got plenty of spectrum, but on the other side I don't. And to have that hospital spend $3 million or $4 million, expect me to come in and pay $1 million to cover the whole thing with the DAS when I only need one wing in a hospital is not a sustainable model. What we need to see in these venues is we need to see them either decide to put the capital in themselves, just like, as we were talking earlier, just like they bring power and light, water, all the rest of those utilities in, if they want it, they need to start putting it in themselves, and we'll come. I see come across my desk leases for zero rent and no additional cost. I see several of them a month come across the landlords of these types of venues, particularly corporate venues where they put in the resources themselves, and they just say, come, bring the system. And so that's a really big area. What we need to work on changing the mentality. If we want to introduce a third party into this, where they can start making money, is they need to change their philosophy from being the typical neutral host provider to being more like a typical real estate broker, and just take their 6% of the sale and get out of the way. Bring the parties together, make a reasonable thing. That's what you see in commercial real estate, you see in residential real estate, you see in so many other things. But they need to get out of the way and find a new way to facilitate us coming together. And we're starting to see in a lot of the commercial real estate space, we're starting to see real estate developers realize that it's a selling point for their property to say that it's wired, it's wireless enabled. And they're recognizing that in a competitive commercial space, the ability to say, look, we have all the carriers hooked up to a system here, and you're going to have great coverage in our building compared to the guy across the street. It helps fill their space. And that's an important point for us to continue to emphasize as we're out in the marketplace, talking to all these different verticals and saying, this is a selling point for you. It does, and we need to build on those examples, like the hospital case where the nurses are more efficient, where it helps the real estate company fill their space faster. And that's what the industry needs to move towards. It needs to move away from this model where the landlord thinks that they're going to make, X amount of money, additional money on the DAS system that's really benefiting their customers, their tenants, as much as not more than it benefits us.
I agree with everything.
See, I have to disagree with you. I think, yes, we have to.
That's okay.
We have to go. We have to fill the void and the holes in our networks. And again, but each of us have a different reason why we end up needing to be there. Some are driven much more by capacity needs to fill a network problem. Some of us have needs for coverage. But as the new equipment becomes more readily available, some of the stuff that Dally has, some of the stuff that other companies have provided, the big OEMs are now providing, they provide lower cost, single user solutions that are so much more efficient from a capital and a cost perspective that it really makes it difficult for the carriers to sit there and go, wow, I want to put that great big multi-million-dollar DAS system in there to cover this part, when honestly there is no return on investment in that part. I mean, you could, unless you're talking that they're running hundreds and hundreds of concerts a year, and even then, there's a struggle to have a return on that investment. We do it because it's, as some people in my company call it, we're conspicuous in our absence with the coverage, because the public expects it to be there, but it's not cost effective to go and put in that great big neutral host DAS system. There are more efficient ways to do it. Nokia and Ericsson have new small cell solutions that we can deploy for a quarter of the cost, and in some cases a tenth of the cost of what we would have to do to pay for that neutral host head-end based solution. And we need to find and drive to the new solutions that are coming out. Or we can't cover all these places. There's just not enough capital in the world to cover all these places to the extent that we need to continue to put the old DAS type systems in.
But to take the point from Chris's presentation this morning for Nokia, as a building owner, or the owner of the enterprise, sometimes they say, it's cheaper for you, T-Mobile. I know we're building up 4 times before we operate.
Then we need to change their mind. We do, because then back to what they need to do is they need to say, great, then they need to put the infrastructure in so all 4 of us can have the chases and the fiber, and then we can get to what we need to without having to rip everything up. So that we can go in and we can put in the remote radio or the access node without tearing everything up, because they've already put it in the last time they ripped it through going.
So educating them on what infrastructure needs to be in place to support additional operators in the future would help make sure that at least the major pain points are only addressed once.
Exactly. We do have a mechanism in the U.S. that, while it doesn't allow us to sit down and draw plans and say which venues we're going to go out to address as a carrier group, but there is a teaming agreement in place between the major carriers that allows us to jointly develop major venues and locations. One example that's going on right now, there's over 20 of them in progress across the United States today. One that we're leading for the carrier team is the Chicago Transit Authority, which is an over $30 million deployment for their transit system. It allows us to come together and jointly develop the network in that location, and it does allow us to drive costs out of the business, and it does allow us to do things more efficiently because we remove the third party that neutral host provider between us and the So, and there are actively 20 of those going on now. That agreement has been in place for close to 15 years, and it's been used successfully for major airports, major venues, and it will continue to be actively used to provide solutions.
Just incidentally, how the carrier decide elect to use that or not use that?
It's a voluntary election, and when a venue becomes available and there's an RFP for it, one of the carriers can choose to take the lead position, and then they solicit participation of the other carriers to work jointly with it.
Okay, so that's through an additional RFP process?
No, it doesn't. No, I mean, there has to be an official opportunity, not necessarily official. There has to be an opportunity that we choose to do, and then we can choose to do it as a continuing. I think it is. I mean, yes, I think that you have the third parties, Crown and DAS and Mobility and others that continue to want to participate in that space. But I think that even within those companies, that their paradigm is going to shift on how they work with us and how they provide the solutions in those different venues. I think that many of them have systems out there where they can't attract enough. They can't attract all four of us. They can't attract enough to make the returns that they want. And so I think that they will look for other ways to monetize the rights that they have with those networks. We work and are to continue to work with one of the larger in-building providers on a different system in areas where they haven't already deployed capital. We're working and testing a new model with them that would allow us to deploy a single user system, a Spider Cloud or a Nokia Ericsson Dot, in the facility, lowering where they don't have to put out the capital, the large dollars for that DAS system that nobody else seems to want because they've had it for 5 or 6 years. Nobody's knocking the door to get there, so they have no way of getting a return to invest in that. We're coming to them and saying, look, let's go with a model where you get a reasonable return on what you've already invested in, and we can deploy a system that meets our needs for a lot less money, and everybody, it's a great win-win opportunity. We're working out the kinks on it. I suspect that we'll have some systems up and running within this year that maximize on that. And so, yes, will there be the NFL stadium where a third party goes in and builds it, and we all are forced, because it's a mini monopoly, to plug our nose and attach to the system? Yes, I think that those will continue to be there in the near term. In the long term, I think that as technology changes, as the perception changes, that we will find other ways to solve this problem. I think the shift has already started, and the foundation is starting to crumble underneath the old DAS model that we've all been accustomed to, that we've seen in airports and NFL stadiums and baseball parks. So, I'm going to make reference back to, for those who did the keynote earlier, Dave Mayo. He made reference that that's a challenge for us across all of our real estate endeavors. In our business, the only cost that we have not been able to successfully drive down is our real estate costs. It's the only cost that they go up. They go up every day, whether I want them to or not. Tomorrow, my real estate costs are more than they were today, and that's got to change. And so, in these spaces, particularly around getting into as we go from the big venues, the ones that are already kind of locked in, I don't have any control over that right now. And I said, I'll hold my nose and I'll attach to an NFL stadium because I have to. But when I start getting down into the smaller venues, the hospitals, the enterprise spaces, I can't afford to pay anything for those spaces. And so, we will walk away from those as the opportunity presents itself if it doesn't make sense for us. And I think what you'll see is that there'll be a shift in the real estate environment that starts recognizing that there's the cost to those venues to not have us present is going to start becoming more apparent to them. And so they will have to start bearing more of the burden, just like we talked about before. Just like they put in power and water and they put down the punch-down blocks for the telco and their facility, that if they want to attract people to their facilities and their venues, they're going to have to start participating in bearing the cost. I see, as I stated already, I see that the sands of the foundation of what we've been doing in the past have already started to shift. And I see the industry, the models that we've been using going away in the near future and accelerating very quickly. I think that the old model that we've used with the Crowns and the ATCs of the world has got to, we've got to find a way to accelerate not using those models anymore. We have to find ways to put the newer technologies into use, and we have to find ways to expand the concept that the verticals are going to provide the infrastructure themselves. If they want to provide it to their customers. So we had an experience with a very large hospitality and entertainment company a few weeks ago, and where they're coming to me and saying, you've got to run these data systems that we've hired a third party to put in place for us, and you've got to pay several $1 million to run the system because your customers are coming to my front desk and complaining about your poor service. And my answer back to them was, no, they're your customers. They're coming to complain to you because you haven't provided what they expect in a facility such as yours. And in order for us together to meet our own customer needs, you have to strip away the third party that's been put in the middle, that's charging you millions of dollars to be there. Oh, and by the way, you have to get rid of what you're also making off of that if you expect them to be we have to change the model. We have to strip away the recurring costs to the landlords. We have to strip away the extra costs to the third parties, and we have to get to the cheapest, most cost-effective way to do it. If it's teaching the landlords that all four of us have to come and put our own IP or access node in there because that's going to provide everyone the best service, that's what we need to do. At the end of the day, what we've been doing is not going to work for the long term. We've got to stop. We've got to find a new way to do it. We have to change the paradigm of the industry. If the most cost-effective solution is for us to have to put 4 access units in a facility, that's what we have to start educating people to do. The neutral host systems for a hospital are just not cost-effective. Now, I believe that the technologies will continue to develop so that the lower-cost single-user systems that we're seeing will morph into much lower-cost multi-user systems in the future. But as we make that transition today, we have to make sure that we're not pigeonholing ourselves, and frankly, that we saw this in the macro world where companies went out and started selling DAS systems as the end-all be-all to municipalities. Municipalities started writing codes and started thinking, oh, let's put DAS systems in it. Well, they didn't overtake the world because they were never effective and cost-effective. And it's the same thing as we come into the indoor space. We as an industry have to work together to provide the best, most cost-effective solutions for our customers. And it's going to be a balance between educating the venue owners that you have to start bearing the cost, or if you don't want to start bearing the cost to put in the single-user system so that they all come in, then you have to be relaxed and letting the carriers bear the cost, but they're going to put in the most cost-effective system, which could be up to 4 in your facility. That's the paradigm we have to shift. We have to stop doing things that are not going to drive us forward for the future. And that's what we're doing today. We're continuing to use the same models, the same real estate principles, the same paradigm that's going to make it cost prohibitive for us in the future. We need to shift that.